My life was a carefully orchestrated routine of responsibilities. Single mom, 2 jobs, barely making ends meet. Then my car died. A chance encounter with a wealthy entrepreneur's assistant led to an unbelievable opportunity, caring for his dog, Max, with flexible hours and incredible pay. Suddenly, I'm navigating the opulent world of Alexander Gray, a man as captivating as he is intimidating. His piercing blue eyes, reserved demeanor, and surprising kindness create a magnetic pull, even as the vast gulf between our worlds becomes increasingly apparent. Between managing my daughter, a new, luxurious apartment, and the intense attraction brewing between us, I'm constantly reminded that sometimes the most unexpected connections are the ones worth fighting for. The morning air held a crisp chill that signaled autumn's arrival, but I had no time to appreciate it. At 32, my life had become a carefully orchestrated routine of responsibilities. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., prepare breakfast and lunch boxes, get my 10-year-old daughter Lily ready for school, drop her off, rush to my morning shift at Percolate Coffee Shop, pick up freelance translation work in the evening, and somehow find time to be present for my daughter. Lily, we need to leave in 5 minutes. I called up the stairs, hastily tucking my dark hair behind my ears as I packed the last of her lunch. Since Robert had left us 3 years ago, walked out with little explanation beyond, I need to find myself, I had become accustomed to the weight of being everything to my daughter: mother, father, provider, and emotional anchor. The financial strain was constant. My coffee shop job barely covered rent for our modest 2-bedroom apartment in the less fashionable part of town, and the online translation work, while leveraging my bilingual skills, came with unpredictable income. Each month was a delicate balancing act of priorities. What bill could wait? What expense was absolutely necessary? Coming, Mom. Lily bounded down the stairs, her backpack swinging precariously from one shoulder, dark pigtails bouncing with each step. Despite everything, Lily remained bright and resilient, a source of immeasurable joy in my life. Did you remember your science project? I asked, handing her the lunch bag. Yep, all packed. She patted her backpack with pride. Her enthusiasm for school was one blessing I counted daily. We hurried out to our aging Honda Civic, a relic from better days, that had survived through sheer stubbornness and my reluctance to take on more debt. The car had been making unsettling noises for weeks, but I had pushed the worry aside. Not today, I silently pleaded each morning when turning the key. Today, the car decided not to cooperate. We made it halfway to Westridge Elementary when the engine sputtered and died, forcing me to navigate to the side of the road. No, 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 I muttered, turning the key repeatedly as the engine made pathetic whirring sounds before falling silent. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, momentarily overwhelmed by the new problem I couldn't afford to solve. Mom? Lily's voice was small. I have a math test first period. I looked at my watch, 8:40 a.m. I know, sweetie. Let me think. I reached for my phone to call for help, though I wasn't sure who to call. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, was at work, and my mother lived 3 states away. While I was scrolling through my limited contact list, a sleek black sedan pulled up beside us. The window rolled down smoothly, revealing a well-dressed man in his 40s with kind eyes and a golden retriever sitting contentedly on his lap. Car trouble? He inquired politely. I hesitated, my city-honed wariness battling with desperation. Yes, it just died on us, I admitted. I'm Richard, the man offered. I'm heading downtown if you need a ride. I noticed the school uniform, he added, nodding toward Lily. I assessed him quickly, the quality of his suit, the well-groomed dog, his gentle demeanor. Taking a calculated risk, I nodded. That would be incredibly helpful. My daughter has a test this morning. Minutes later, we were settled in the plush leather interior of Richard's car. Golden Retriever Max had immediately taken to Lily, resting his head on her lap as she giggled and stroked his soft fur. Max doesn't usually warm up to strangers so quickly, Richard observed with a smile. He has good instincts about people. He's beautiful, I replied. We've always wanted a dog, but our apartment doesn't allow pets. As we drove, Richard explained that he worked as a personal assistant to Alexander Gray, one of the city's most prominent entrepreneurs and philanthropists. I'd seen the name in newspapers and on buildings downtown. Gray Enterprises dominated the skyline and the business section equally. Actually, he said as we pulled up to Westridge Elementary, My boss is looking for someone to care for Max when he travels. The pay is excellent and the hours are flexible. I tried not to appear too eager, but the prospect of better pay and flexible hours, exactly what I needed to balance work and Lily's needs, was incredibly appealing. If you're interested, Richard continued, handing me a business card, after Lily had thanked us both and rushed off to class. Come to this address tomorrow morning at 10. I'll let Mr. Gray know about you. I stared at the embossed card, recognizing the prestigious address in the city's wealthiest neighborhood. I don't have any professional pet care experience, I admitted. Richard smiled as Max rested his head on his shoulder. Max liked you, and that's the most important qualification. Mr. Gray trusts Max's judgment. After arranging for my car to be towed to a mechanic, another expense I couldn't afford, Richard drove me to the coffee shop. As I walked in 20 minutes late, my manager's disapproving look felt less intimidating than usual. In my hand, I clutched the business card like a lottery ticket. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I sat at our small kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea and contemplating the opportunity. The mechanic had called with bad news. The car needed a new transmission, a repair cost that might as well have been $1 million given my current finances. I pulled out my laptop and searched for Alexander Gray. Pages of results appeared: business profiles, charity galas, real estate acquisitions. In every photo, he appeared immaculate and imposing, tall with sharp features and penetrating blue eyes. The articles described him as brilliant but reclusive, notoriously private, and ruthlessly efficient. Not exactly the kind of person I imagined would care deeply about a dog. Yet the opportunity was too good to pass up. With trembling fingers, I sent an email to the address on Richard's card, confirming my interest in the position. Tomorrow would bring either a dead end or a turn of events that my practical mind couldn't quite let itself hope for. The next morning, I stood at the wrought iron gates of Gray Manor, my heart pounding with apprehension. The estate was even more imposing in person than in the photographs I'd seen online. A sprawling mansion of stone and glass, surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens. I smoothed down my only professional-looking blouse and took a deep breath before pressing the intercom button. Emily Chen for Mr. Gray, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The gates swung open silently, and I walked up the long driveway, feeling increasingly out of place with each step. What was I doing here? People like me didn't belong in houses like this. Richard greeted me at the door with a reassuring smile. Right on time, he said, ushering me into a foyer larger than my entire apartment. Mr. Gray appreciates punctuality. Max bounded toward us, his tail wagging excitedly as he recognized me. I knelt to greet him, grateful for the friendly face. Hello again, handsome, I murmured, scratching behind his ears. He remembered you, Richard observed. That's a good sign. Come, Mr. Gray is in the garden. As we walked through the mansion, I tried not to gawk at the artwork adorning the walls or the vaulted ceilings that made the space feel like a modern cathedral to wealth. Each room we passed was immaculately designed but strangely impersonal, like pages from a luxury magazine rather than a lived-in home. The back garden was a stark contrast, vibrant and alive with late-blooming flowers and the gentle sound of a stone fountain. A tall figure stood with his back to us, seemingly absorbed in examining a rose bush. Mr. Gray, Richard called. Emily Chen is here. The man turned, and I found myself looking into the most intense blue eyes I'd ever seen. Alexander Gray was taller than I'd expected, with broad shoulders and features that were both sharp and harmonious. His dark hair was impeccably styled, and his tailored suit seemed molded to his athletic frame. Everything about him exuded authority and control. Thank you, Richard, he said, his voice deep and measured. His eyes assessed me with clinical precision. Miss Chen? I extended my hand, determined not to show my nervousness. Mr. Gray, thank you for considering me. His handshake was firm but brief. Richard speaks highly of you, and Max seems to approve. That's a rare combination. A slight smile softened his otherwise serious expression. Please, sit. He gestured to a stone bench near the fountain, and I sat, careful to maintain proper posture. Max immediately settled at my feet as if we were old friends. Tell me about yourself, Alexander Gray said, remaining standing. Richard mentioned you're a single mother. Yes, I replied, unsure how much personal information to share. My daughter Lily is 10. I currently work at Percolate Coffee Shop and do freelance translation work in the evenings. Languages: Mandarin, English, and conversational Spanish. He nodded, seemingly filing away this information. And what experience do you have with dogs? I grew up with dogs, though I haven't been able to have one since moving to the city, I admitted, but I've always had a way with animals. As if to confirm my words, Max rested his head on my knee, looking up at me adoringly. Alexander Gray observed this with interest. Max is usually more reserved with strangers. He must sense something in you. For the next 20 minutes, he asked practical questions about my availability, my schedule with Lily, and my comfort level with staying overnight at the estate when he traveled. His manner was direct but not unkind, though I sensed a carefully maintained distance in his interactions. The position would involve more than just caring for Max, he explained. I need someone discreet who can occasionally handle personal matters, taking delivery of packages, coordinating with household staff, ensuring everything runs smoothly in my absence. I understand, I said, though privately I wondered what personal matters might entail. The compensation would be $5,000 per month with healthcare benefits, he continued, watching my reaction. I couldn't hide my shock. That was more than triple what I currently made between both jobs. That's very generous, I managed to say. I value reliability and discretion, he replied simply. Richard will show you around the estate and explain the specific responsibilities. If you're still interested after that, the position is yours. Before I could properly thank him, his phone rang. He checked it, then gave me a nod. Excuse me, I have to take this. Richard will finish up. As he walked away, phone to his ear, his demeanor shifted instantly to what I imagined was his business persona, commanding, focused, and completely in control. Richard smiled at my slightly dazed expression. He likes you, he said. I can tell. How? I asked, genuinely curious. He let Max stay with you the whole time. And he talked for more than 30 seconds. That's practically effusive for Mr. Gray. As Richard led me through the house, explaining the security systems, Max's routines, and my responsibilities, I tried to process what had just happened. Had I really just been offered a job that could solve all my financial problems? By a man who, despite his intimidating reputation, had seemed almost human? By the time I left the estate, employment contract in hand, I felt like I was floating in a dream. The only thing anchoring me to reality was Max's golden fur still clinging to my black pants, tangible proof that this opportunity was real. Walking to the bus stop, I called the coffee shop manager and gave my 2 weeks' notice. Then I called Lily's after-school program to say I'd be picking her up myself from now on. Guess what, sweetie? I said when I saw her bright face. Things are about to get a lot better for us. I didn't tell her about the butterflies in my stomach or the strange feeling I had that my life had just changed in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Some intuitions were too fragile to voice aloud, even to the person I loved most in the world. 3 weeks into my new job, I had settled into a routine that felt both comfortable and surreal. Each morning, I would arrive at the estate at 7:30 a.m. after dropping Lily at school. Max would greet me at the door with enthusiastic leaps and bounds, his whole body wiggling with joy. I'd take him for a morning walk around the expansive grounds, then attend to whatever tasks Richard had left for me. Sometimes Alexander Gray would appear unexpectedly, in the kitchen as I prepared Max's special diet food, or in the library where I often sat with my laptop handling correspondence. He moved silently for such a large man, materializing like a well-dressed apparition. "Good morning, Emily," he would say, his voice always controlled and even. "How is Max today?" Our conversations were brief, but increasingly less formal. He asked about Lily once, remembering her name, which surprised me. "How is your daughter adjusting to your new schedule?" "She's thriving," I told him honestly. "Being able to pick her up from school myself has made a world of difference, and—" I hesitated before adding, "We've moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Thank you for making that possible." He nodded, seemingly uncomfortable with gratitude. "You've earned it. Richard tells me you're extremely efficient." Those small interactions became highlights of my days, though I tried not to examine why too closely. There was something magnetic about Alexander Gray, a contained energy, an intensity that felt almost palpable when he entered a room. I told myself it was natural to be curious about someone so different from anyone I'd ever known. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in the kitchen with my translation work spread before me, taking advantage of the quiet time while Max napped, when Alexander walked in, looking uncharacteristically casual in dark jeans and a gray sweater. "You're working on translations here?" he asked, peering at my laptop. I immediately began gathering my papers. "I'm sorry, I should have asked." "No," he interrupted, raising a hand. "I'm not objecting. I'm curious. What languages?" "This one is Mandarin to English, a business proposal for a technology company." Something sparked in his eyes. "May I?" He gestured to the chair across from me. Surprised, I nodded. He sat and glanced at the document. "Your translation is quite nuanced. Most people would miss the cultural subtext in paragraph 3. "You read Mandarin?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "I do business throughout Asia. It's useful." He pointed to a specific phrase. "How would you translate this idiom? The literal meaning doesn't quite capture it." For the next hour, we discussed language, cultural nuances in business communications, and eventually drifted to books we had both read. I discovered that behind his reserved exterior was a deeply intelligent and well-read man. When he finally glanced at his watch and stood, I was startled to realize how much time had passed. "I've kept you from your work," he said. "My apologies." "Not at all," I replied, meaning it. "This was educational." He looked at me for a moment longer than usual. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation over coffee sometime." Before I could process the invitation, his phone rang. It always seemed to ring at pivotal moments. He checked it, his expression instantly shifting to what I had come to think of as his business mask. "I need to take this," he said, already walking away. "We'll talk later." Later that week, Alexander invited me to join him and Max for a walk around the property. The conversation flowed more easily this time, and I found myself sharing stories about Lily's artistic talents and my dreams of someday translating novels rather than business documents. "You should pursue that," he said simply, as if deciding to change careers was as easy as changing lanes while driving. "It's not that simple when you have responsibilities," I replied. "What if it could be?" he asked, stopping to look at me directly. "What if you had the resources to focus on what truly matters to you?" There was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart quicken. "That's not the world most people live in, Mr. Gray." "Alexander," he corrected, "and perhaps it could be your world." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek convertible roaring up the driveway. A stunning woman with cascading blonde hair emerged, her designer outfit probably worth more than my entire wardrobe. "Alex," she called, her voice musical and refined. "Darling, you've been impossible to reach." I watched as Alexander's posture changed subtly. A slight stiffening of his shoulders, a barely perceptible sigh. "Caroline," he acknowledged, walking toward her. "This is unexpected." She air-kissed both his cheeks, then noticed me standing awkwardly with Max. "Oh, you must be the new pet sitter Richard mentioned." Her smile was polite but dismissive, her eyes quickly returning to Alexander. "The Hendersons are expecting us for dinner on Thursday. I've come to make sure you haven't forgotten." I took that as my cue to leave. "I should get Max back for his dinner," I murmured, tugging gently on the leash. Alexander frowned slightly. "Emily." "It's fine," I assured him, already retreating. "I'll see you tomorrow." As I walked away, I heard Caroline's melodic laugh drifting through the air. Of course, someone like her would be in Alexander's life. Elegant, sophisticated, part of his world in a way I could never be. The coffee invitation, the walks, the conversations. They were likely just the actions of a kind employer, and I had been foolish to let my imagination suggest otherwise. That evening, as I helped Lily with her homework, my phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. "I apologize for the interruption today. Caroline is my business partner's sister and an old family friend. Nothing more. Coffee tomorrow?" I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before realizing I was smiling. With fingers that trembled slightly, I typed my reply, "Coffee sounds nice. Emily." As I placed my phone down, I caught my reflection in the window. Cheeks flushed, eyes bright. I looked away quickly, reminding myself of the reality. He was Alexander Gray, one of the city's wealthiest men, and I was his dog sitter, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck despite my improved circumstances. We existed in the same physical space, but our worlds couldn't be further apart. And yet, as Max had taught me in our short time together, sometimes the most unexpected connections are the ones worth pursuing. The invitation to Alexander's charity gala arrived via Richard, who handed me the cream-colored envelope with an enigmatic smile. "Mr. Gray specifically requested your presence," he said, his tone suggesting this was unusual. I turned the heavy paper in my hands, feeling both flattered and terrified. "I don't have anything to wear to something like this," I admitted. Richard's eyes twinkled. "Check the guest room closet. Mr. Gray had a few options delivered. Your size was in your employment paperwork." Sure enough, I found 3 evening gowns hanging in the closet, a midnight blue, a deep emerald, and a classic black, all with their tags still attached. Each was more beautiful than anything I'd ever owned, and undoubtedly more expensive. My first instinct was to refuse. This felt like crossing a line from professional to something undefined. But curiosity and a flutter of something I wasn't ready to name won out. I tried on the emerald dress, and the woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, elegant and poised in a way I'd never seen myself. The night of the gala, my neighbor agreed to watch Lily, who was almost more excited than I was. "You look like a princess, Mom," she said, eyes wide as I twirled for her in the dress. "Remember, it's just for one night," I cautioned her, and myself. Walking into the grand ballroom of the Heritage Hotel, I felt like an imposter. The room glittered with wealth and privilege, women dripping in diamonds, men in perfectly tailored tuxedos, everyone radiating the easy confidence that comes from belonging. I spotted Alexander immediately. He stood tall among a group of admirers, commanding attention without effort. When his eyes found mine across the room, something in his expression shifted, a softening, a focus that made my heart skip. He excused himself and made his way to me, turning heads as he moved deliberately through the crowd. "Emily," he said, taking my hand. "You look stunning." "Thank you," I managed, hyper-aware of his touch. "This is all a bit overwhelming. Stay close to me," he said simply. "You'll be fine." For the next hour, Alexander introduced me to various guests, business associates, philanthropists, old friends. I was surprised to find myself engaging easily in conversations about art, literature, and global affairs, topics I'd always followed but rarely had the opportunity to discuss in my daily life. "Where did you find her, Alex?" one woman asked with a knowing smile. "She's absolutely charming." Before he could answer, Caroline appeared, resplendent in a red gown that emphasized her perfect figure. "Alex, the Morrisons are asking for you," she said, laying a familiar hand on his arm. Her eyes flicked to me with barely concealed assessment. "Emily, right? So nice to see you again. The emerald was a good choice. Very festive." Alexander frowned. "Emily, would you excuse us for a moment? I need to speak with Caroline." As they walked away, I moved toward the bar, suddenly needing a moment alone. I ordered a sparkling water, watching Alexander and Caroline engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Their body language spoke of familiarity and shared history, of belonging to the same world. First time at one of these events, I turned to find an older gentleman smiling kindly at me. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Only because you're still capable of genuine expressions," he replied with a wink. "I'm Harold Preston, Alex's godfather." "Emily Chen," I offered. "I work for Mr. Gray." Harold's eyes twinkled. "Yes, I know who you are. Alex has mentioned you. Frequently." Before I could process that, I overheard 2 women talking nearby, their voices carrying despite their attempt at discretion. "She must be his latest project," one said. "You know how Alex is, always rescuing something or someone." "Well, she's pretty enough," the other replied, "but hardly his type. Can you imagine her at board meetings, or in Tokyo with the Nakamuras?" My cheeks burned with humiliation. Of course, they were right. What had I been thinking? That Alexander Gray, who could have anyone, would seriously be interested in me? I was just an employee who happened to care for his beloved dog. Any kindness beyond that was merely his natural generosity, the same instinct that led him to donate millions to children's charities and education initiatives. I placed my untouched drink on the bar and made my way toward the exit, desperate for fresh air and perspective. Outside on the terrace, I breathed deeply, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The decision formed clearly in my mind. I needed to resign before I embarrassed myself further. This evening had shown me the vast gulf between our worlds. a chasm no amount of shared coffee or conversations could bridge. I would find another job, something that wouldn't involve these confusing emotions. The next morning, I arrived early at the estate, resignation letter in hand. I placed it on Alexander's desk in his home office, a room I rarely entered, and went about my duties with Max, trying to memorize the feel of his soft fur and eager affection. I would miss him terribly. As I was preparing to leave, the skies opened in a sudden downpour. I stood under the portico, calculating how wet I would get running to my car, when Alexander's voice startled me. "Going somewhere?" he asked, holding my resignation letter. I turned to face him, raindrops pounding the pavement behind me. "I think it's for the best," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Why?" The single word contained more emotion than I'd ever heard from him. "Because this," I gestured vaguely between us, "whatever this is becoming, it can't work. You saw those people last night. They know it. I know it." "What exactly do they know, Emily?" he asked, stepping closer. "That I don't belong in your world," I said plainly. "You need someone like Caroline, someone who understands your life, who can stand beside you at galas and business dinners without people whispering." Alexander's expression darkened. "Caroline is my business partner's sister and a family friend. Nothing more. And those people, whispering, their opinions mean nothing to me." Rain had begun to soak his white shirt where he stood at the edge of the portico's shelter, but he seemed not to notice. "For 3 years I've lived in this house, but it wasn't a home," he continued, his voice low and intense. "It was a place to sleep between meetings, a showcase for entertaining business associates. Then you arrived with your genuine smile and your stories about Lily, and suddenly these rooms felt different." He stepped fully into the rain, no longer caring about the downpour soaking him. "Do you know what I look forward to most each day? Coming home to find you and Max in the kitchen or the garden, seeing someone who looks at me as a person, not as Alexander Gray, CEO." I stood frozen, rain beginning to spatter against my face as I moved closer to the edge of the shelter. "Alexander, I've spent my life building walls to protect myself," he interrupted, rain streaming down his face. "And somehow, without even trying, you walked right through them. So no, I won't accept this resignation." Heart pounding, I stepped fully into the rain to face him. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," he said simply. "Your smile in the morning, your stories about Lily, your passion for languages and books, your brutal honesty when I'm being difficult. I want you, Emily Chen, exactly as you are." The rain fell between us like a veil, washing away pretenses and barriers. I reached up, brushing a droplet from his cheek. "People will talk." "Let them," he whispered, leaning into my touch. His lips found mine with unexpected gentleness, a question rather than a demand. I answered by wrapping my arms around his neck, my resignation letter forgotten as the rain soaked us both. When we finally broke apart, both breathless and drenched, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay," he murmured, "not as my employee. Stay because you want to." In that moment, standing in the rain with this complex, brilliant man who had somehow found his way into my heart, I made my choice. "I'll stay," I whispered, "but we take this slowly for Lily's sake." He nodded, taking my hand as we walked back toward the house. "We have all the time in the world." Behind us, my resignation letter lay on the wet pavement, the ink running in rivulets as the rain washed away the words. 6 months passed like a dream. Alexander and I took things slowly, as promised, building a relationship based on morning coffees, evening walks with Max, and long conversations about everything and nothing. He joined Lily and me for movie nights in our apartment, arriving with ice cream and an endearing nervousness about whether a 10-year-old would find him interesting. Lily, of course, was enchanted from the moment Alexander showed genuine interest in her art, asking questions and listening intently as she explained her creative process. When he surprised her with professional quality art supplies for her birthday, she threw her arms around him without hesitation. The look of stunned pleasure on his face nearly brought me to tears. "No one's hugged me like that in years," he admitted later that night as we sat on my small balcony, the city lights twinkling below us. "Get used to it," I replied, leaning my head against his shoulder. "She's very affectionate once she trusts you." "Like her mother," he murmured, kissing the top of my head. The transition wasn't without challenges. The tabloids had a field day when Alexander Gray, notorious bachelor and business titan, was spotted at the local ice cream parlor with a mystery woman and child. The speculation ranged from charitable mentorship to secret family, each headline more ridiculous than the last. Caroline made her disapproval clear during an uncomfortable dinner at Alexander's home, where she pointedly asked about my career aspirations with thinly veiled condescension. To his credit, Alexander shut down her insinuations immediately, but the encounter left me shaken. "She'll come around," he assured me, "and if she doesn't, that's her loss." His confidence gave me strength, but I still felt the weight of societal expectations. I threw myself into a translation certification program, determined to build a career worthy of standing beside him, though Alexander insisted I had nothing to prove. The most significant moment came 3 months into our relationship when Alexander suggested we move in together at his estate. "It's too soon," I protested, though the practical benefits were undeniable. "And it's your space. Lily and I would be invading." "It's just a house, Emily," he said earnestly. "You and Lily would make it a home." We compromised with a gradual transition, weekend stays that became longer visits, clothes and toys that migrated slowly from our apartment to the mansion. Alexander converted one wing into a studio space for Lily and surprised me with a home office overlooking the garden for my translation work. The media attention eventually died down as we maintained a low profile, though I still felt occasional stares when we ventured out together. Alexander remained unfazed, his hand steady at the small of my back, his eyes never seeking validation from onlookers. This morning, I stood in the expansive kitchen of what was now our home, watching through the window as Lily chased Max through the garden, her laughter carrying on the spring breeze. Alexander's arms encircled me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice soft against my ear. "About how strange life is," I replied, leaning back into his embrace. "If my car hadn't broken down that day, if Richard hadn't stopped to help us, if Max hadn't liked me." I turned in his arms to face him. So many chance occurrences had to align for us to be here now. Alexander's blue eyes, once so intimidating, now held only warmth as they gazed into mine. "I don't believe it was chance," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Some things are meant to be, even if they arrive in unexpected packages." "The successful businessman believes in fate?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. "The successful businessman believes in recognizing value when he sees it," he corrected with a smile. "And you, Emily Chen, are the most valuable thing that's ever happened to me." Outside, Lily had stopped running and was now sitting cross-legged on the lawn, sketching something as Max lounged beside her. The sight filled me with a contentment I'd never thought possible. "I've been thinking," Alexander said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "What if we made this arrangement more permanent?" My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I mean this," he said, opening it to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. "I chose emerald to match the dress you wore the night I realized I was falling in love with you." Tears filled my eyes as he took my hand. "Emily Chen, you walked into my life by accident and stayed by choice. You've taught me that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or business acquisitions, but in moments of genuine connection. Will you marry me?" For a moment, I thought about the improbability of it all, how the single mother working 2 jobs had found herself here, loved by this remarkable man. I thought about the difficulties we'd faced and those yet to come. Then I looked into his eyes and saw everything that mattered. "Yes," I whispered, my voice catching. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto my finger and pulled me close. Our lips met in a kiss that felt like both a culmination and a beginning. Later, when we shared the news with Lily, her squeal of delight brought Max running, barking excitedly as if he understood the celebration. As my daughter hugged us both, chattering about being a flower girl and whether Max could carry the rings, I caught Alexander's eye over her head. In that moment of shared joy, I understood completely what he'd meant earlier. Some connections are simply meant to be, arriving in our lives disguised as accidents or coincidences. The breakdown of my old car had led to the rebuilding of something far more precious, a family, created not by obligation or convention, but by choice and love. Outside, the sun bathed the garden in golden light, illuminating our future with promises of days filled with both ordinary moments and extraordinary blessings. I had finally learned what Alexander had known all along. Life's most precious gifts often arrive in the most unexpected ways. The end.